Hi, my name is Lynn Thompson. I'm the president of Cold Steel and the chief instructor of our knife fighting training program here. On this tape, which is the second in our series, we're going to be concentrating on teaching you footwork. The first thing we're going to do is explain the clock concept, then we're going to show our basic on-guard fighting stance, then I'm going to cover some of the common mistakes people make in their stances, then we're going to go into the footwork drills and techniques that we use to turn you into a superior knife fighter. It's really important that you pay a lot of attention to this tape and really practice it hard, because there are no superior knife fighters that don't have superior footwork. Let's go down to the gymnasium and start training. To assume our basic stance, I want you to pretend that you're standing in the middle of a big clock. You're right in the middle. 12 o'clock is directly in front of you. 6 o'clock is to your rear. 3 o'clock is off to your right, and 9 o'clock is off to your left. I want you to stand with your feet shoulders distance apart. Take one normal step forward on your right leg. If you're left-handed, you're going to reverse this and go one step forward on your left leg. Now, I want you to point your toes to 11 o'clock. Both feet, your front foot and your rear foot, are going to move over here so they're pointing at 11 o'clock. Now what I want you to do is I want to take your rear shoulder or your left shoulder if you're right-handed and pull it back. That's going to narrow your body and present a smaller target to your opponent. And also it's going to allow you to cover a smaller area with your knife on the defense. Now I want you to raise your left or rear heel substantially. I want you to come up on your toe. I want your heel to be 2 to 3 inches off the ground. Exaggerate that until you get used to it, because this is going to be your spring that's going to take you forward and backward and from side to side. This is very important to keep your heel off the ground at all times. Now I want you to take your left hand, if you're right-handed, and I want you to bring it over here, and I want you to put it on your left pec. We call this your live hand because most people forget when they're fighting somebody with a weapon that there's another hand involved. They think this hand is dead, but it's not. It's alive, and it can be used in the fight at the appropriate times. So you're going to put this hand right here on your left pec. I don't want you to put it on your sternum. I don't want you to cross over and put it on your right pec, because when you do that, you limit how you can use this hand. If I want to throw a left cross, it's a perfect position. But if I have it here, I can't get that cross out. All I can do is maybe back knuckle, or backhand slap, or backhand chop. But I want it right here, where I can put it in motion with a moment's notice. Also now, I want you to keep this left elbow in close to your body. Don't be letting it come out like that. That'll give an opening to your opponent you don't want him to have. So it needs to stay in tight here, relaxed. It can either rest on your left pec or just float slightly off it. Don't let it drift out, because that'll give another opening to your opponent to cut that. So we want it resting right here. I want you to raise your knife hand now. Your right elbow should be just in front of your floating rib, right that. And the point of your fighting knife should be at your opponent's face. So now you're like, basically like this, and now your knees should be flexed. Flex your knees a little bit, pull your left shoulder back. Now you're in our basic fighting stance. I want you to keep your knife in this window that I'm describing right now. It's from your shoulder to hip to hip. Basically, you want to keep your knife in this window of movement. We call this the window of movement. This is where you want your knife to stay at all times, in this window of movement. When you raise it higher than that window, it makes it hard to defend this line. When you drop it below your hips, you can't get it up in time to defend your face. So until you become a very experienced knife fighter, I want you to keep your knife in this window of movement. There are a number of common mistakes you can make in your on-guard or fighting stance. When you're looking in front of a mirror and practicing both your on-guard or fighting stance and also your footwork, you need to constantly look in the mirror to see if you're making these mistakes. The first one is, when you step forward and turn to come on guard, what happens is you're moving around, you start to what we call square to your opponent. You start getting wider and wider and wider and wider until you're facing your opponent like this, square. what you're doing is you're exposing this flank and this elbow. This is starting to stick out when you turn square. It's starting to stick out on this side, and you're exposing your right elbow, your right shoulder, and particularly this entire left flank. So you want to always avoid being square to your opponent. Get behind your knife. Get in tight, get behind your knife. Don't get square. A lot of people have boxing backgrounds, and they try to crouch naturally when they are fighting with a knife. What they'll do is they'll get down here like this. Sometimes they'll bring their hands up and they drop their chin, they raise their shoulders, and they lean forward. Well, when you're crouched like this, you're in a pretty good defensive posture when you're boxing, but this won't work for knife fighting. What you're doing when you crouch and lean forward like this is you're giving your opponent your face as a target. What you're doing is you're moving it to where your knife doesn't have the normal protection for your face. It's moving it forward, so your knife's of less use to defend your face with. You always want to avoid crouching. When you see someone crouching and you've got a knife in your hand and you're opposing them, you say, "Thank you, Jesus, I'm going to win," because their face is really vulnerable when they crouch. So this is something you want to avoid like the plague. Another thing that people do wrong in this basic fighting posture or stance, and also when they're moving about, is as they move or they take this stance, they get their legs too long. This is particularly a problem with tall guys. You're too long and you're too unstable, like this, from side to side. So when you're moving about, you always want to keep that one step distance. This is about optimum for your balance point, right here, upright. Stay upright, about one step distance, like this. Don't make your stance too long. The other common mistake is they make their stance too short, or they're not one full step out. Again, it interferes with your balance and your ability to move when your stance is too short. Don't square, that's the other thing. When your stance is short, you start to tend to square. As your stance is normal and you pull this shoulder back, you get the proper presentation to your opponent. As you shorten this stance, you tend to square. Don't shorten your stance. Another common mistake is the stance is too wide, like this. You'll be moving from side to side, and the next thing you know, you're like this. You're too wide, you're square, and you're exposed. You want to avoid that also. Another common mistake in both your on-guard stance and when you're moving about, and we touched on this briefly earlier, is your alive hand starts to drift out. I see this all the time. People it gets clear out here. It may drift out an inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. An inch isn't bad, but I see this a lot. I'll see it clear out here like this when it's all the way opened up like this. This is a choice target for an experienced knifer. Those fingers, as you saw earlier, will come off like little chunks of butter, very, very easily. Keep this in here tight, where he has to reach in deep to attack this. The further he has to reach in deep, the more exposed he is to your blade. Don't give him an extra opportunity to cut this hand off by letting it drift away from your body.
I've known Lynn Thompson since 1982, and he attended one of my seminars in the Filipino martial arts. I really like his knife company. From year after year, his products get better and better. They're high quality blades. He is constantly investigating the most efficient way to make a better product. He keeps up with all the latest implements that use edge, from the shovel to the hatchet to different swords and different long knives, short knives, folding knives. He's just really at the cutting edge, literally, of his business, and he continues also to train in the martial arts to better his art form along. So he really knows what's going on, and I highly recommend all his products.
Mastery of footwork is the most important thing you need to do to become a good knife fighter. You see, the footwork in knife fighting differs from any other sport. It differs from boxing in particular because you don't need to bring power in your footwork when you're fighting with a knife. The knife does the work, so your footwork needs to be fast, agile, and deceptive. The first thing I'm going to teach you is how to move forward and backwards. I want you to stand with your feet shoulders distance apart, and take your on-guard fighting stance. Make sure your rear heel is up. Bring in your live hand, pin that elbow to your side, get your knife pointed at your opponent's face, pull that shoulder back. Now, to advance with a single step, we're going to push off on our rear leg. That's our left leg if you're right-handed. I want you to push off, take a normal step, and recover. Push off, take a normal step, and recover. Let's do it again. We're going to come on guard. We're going to push off. That's where we're going to get our power from our rear leg. That's going to propel us forward. We're going to take a step and recover. Push off, take a step, and recover. To retreat, we're going to reverse this motion. We're going to use our front leg now as our spring. So I'm going to push off on my front leg, step back, reach back, and recover. Push off, step back, and recover. Push off, step back, and recover. Push off, step back, and recover. Let's repeat. To advance, you're going to push off on your rear leg. Practice this in front of the mirror whenever you can. That's going to be your spring. Push off, take a step, and recover. Push off, take a step, and recover. Look down. Are you one step apart your feet? Are you shoulders distance apart? Are you too narrow? Are you too wide? Are you too long? Is your body squaring like I am right now? Or is your left shoulder turned back? Is your knife hand in the right position where it can move in this window? Is it the point pointing at your opponent? Where's your live hand? Is it drifted away from your body? Those are the things you got to constantly look in the mirror to adjust in your stance and in your motion. Now, when we go backwards, push off on your front leg, reach back and recover. Push off, recover. Push off, recover. Look down. As you move backwards, did you get too narrow? This is what I see commonly when I'm teaching my training classes. They're too narrow. Did you get too long? Did you get too wide again? Did your knife hand drift away? You constantly need to monitor your stance and your motion in the mirror. A single step won't always put you where you want to be on both offense and defense. Sometimes you need to take multiple rapid steps. To do that, assume your fighting stance, and what I want you to do is push off on your front leg and start walking forward. As you come down, your knife hand should always be forward and your knife leg should be forward. To reverse that, you're going to walk backwards and come down. Now, the trick is to be able to do this at speed. From here, you need to go forward quickly. You need to come forward back or come backward quickly. You got to come forward quickly and you got to come backward quickly. Now, look down. What's your stance look like? Are you square? Are you standing square to the opponent? Are you too long? Are you too wide? Are you too narrow? Where's your live hand? These are the things that will screw you up when you're fighting. So the more you practice this and pay attention to these fine points, the better knife fighter you're going to be. The main thing when you run forward quickly is to come down on balance. You've got to come down on balance so you can move. Learning to move laterally when you're fighting with a knife is really important. To practice this, what I want you to do is come in your fighting stance. Look in the mirror, make sure you're in a proper fighting stance. Now what I want you to do to go to the right, you need to push off on your rear leg or left leg, take a step and recover. Push off, take a step and recover. Look down. Have you squared to your opponent? Are your feet too long? Are they too narrow? Are they too wide? Pull that shoulder just a little bit further back. To go the opposite way, to your left, push off on your front leg, move and step. Push off, take that step and recover. Push off, take the step and recover. Push off, take that step and recover. Is your shoulder pulled back? Are you leaning forward? Is your butt pooching out? Pull your butt in. Stand up straight. Don't crouch. Don't give him your head. You want to stay in your proper fighting stance. Let's try that a couple times. Going to go to our right. Going to go to our left. Practice this at home a lot in front of the mirror. taking a single lateral step won't get you out of trouble. It won't get you out of danger. It won't move your body far enough. What you need to do is take multiple steps to the side. Dr. G, one of my friends and mentors, taught me that quite often when you move laterally and a person to avoid someone's cut at you, what they do is they backhand. So they make the one cut and then they'll reach and backhand with the second cut. If you only take one step, they'll reach you with that second cut. So it's important that sometimes you move 2 steps or even 3 steps laterally to get away from your opponent. To practice this, what I want you to do is come on guard in your fighting stance, and I want you to take 2 quick steps to your right. 1, 2, and come down. Then I want you to go to your left. 1, 2, and come down. Look in the mirror now. Did you square to your opponent? Is your stance too long, too short, too wide, or too narrow? Where's your live hand? Is your face crouched forward, or are you upright? Now, I'm not going to bore you in this tape with endless repetitions of footwork. You need to practice at home this footwork thousands of times. I can't tell you how many thousands of hours I spent practicing footwork. You need to do it at home, but I'm not going to take up the whole tape showing endless repetitions. But I do want you to learn how to move. So to move quickly laterally, you can push off on your right leg, your left leg, your rear leg, step and step again. To move the other way to your left, you're going to push off, step, and step again. Now, here's a trick. What happens is, when you're moving laterally quickly, you tend to get too narrow because you push off so hard and you step so wide that your front leg follows and you almost always end up too narrow. Here's the trick. When you push off to go to either side, you step with your back leg, make a half step with your front leg, and you almost always come back perfectly on guard. Push off and take a half step with your recovery step with your forward leg. To go the other way, push off and take a half step with your rear leg, and you come back on guard. Here's another thing I want you to remember when you're moving laterally. I don't want you to do this. Never cross step. I don't want you to do this. Cross your legs. Either when you move into your right, don't want you to do that, or to your left. I don't want you to do this. What happens is, at the most inopportune moment, you'll be crossed like this, you won't be able to move, you'll be off balance, you'll be knocked down, you'll be cut, and it's a great opening for your opponent. When he sees you cross like this, or cross like that, you're really vulnerable. Always avoid that. You have to discipline yourself when you're moving around and when you're sparring to move correctly. Always move correctly, on balance, so that when you come down and you stop for that split second, you can attack or defend in a moment's notice. You're not teetering here off balance. In our long-range knife fighting method, quite often we want to circle our opponent or bring him out into a big extended circle to break up his footwork and to break down his concentration and to make him more vulnerable. To practice walking or moving in big lateral motions, what I want you to do is come on guard, get a good on guard position. Now, to move laterally in a big circle, you're going to pull this front leg back till it's about shoulders width apart. You're going to use this leg as your spring, and you're going to step. And you're going to move around in a circle like this. And if your opponent moves forward, you can come forward to meet him by coming back on guard, just like that. And remember to pull this shoulder back to narrow yourself. You can also come back on guard. If you want to be more defensive as you're moving around, you can pull your left leg back and come on guard. So you have 2 choices when you're making big lateral motions. To come back on guard, you can step forward and come on guard, or you can step back and come on guard. Either way, when you step forward, you're being more aggressive. When you step back, you're being more passive. Sometimes you'll step back to suck him in. Sometimes you'll step forward to drive him off. He thinks, here's an opportunity. You're square. He's going to rush you. So you're moving around, and then you step forward on guard, ready to attack. He goes, oh, I didn't think I was ready for that. good knife fighter is to learn how to protect your front leg and the forward or projecting part of your body. One of the best ways to do this is with what we call front leg replacement. From your fighting stance, again, always never pass up the opportunity to look in the mirror and adjust your fighting stance. From your fighting stance, what I want to do is I want to pull this leg back. This is a good target for my opponent. It's the furthermost part of my leg towards his knife. The back leg is hard for him to reach. The front leg is a lot easier to reach. Now I want to point out to you tall guys, you're particularly vulnerable on your front leg because a shorter opponent barely has to drop to engage that. He doesn't have to move very far to cut your forward leg. So you better be really good at this, okay? Now to do this front leg replacement, what I want you to do is pull this leg back, touch down, and come forward. Don't set your weight back here. That's no good, that's too slow. Touch down and come back. Touch down and come back. Touch down and come back. When that cut comes at your leg, you're going to vacate the space, touch down, and come back on the attack. All right? You can't do that rapidly enough if you transfer your weight back here. Here's another thing that I see that a lot of people do wrong when they're trying to do a front leg replacement. When they pull back, they turn like this. This front leg goes behind the rear leg. So what they're doing is they're rocking their whole body. This is way too slow. This will never go in a knife fight. You'll never be successful. You won't get away, and you won't get your counterattack in. It has to be light, deft motion. Touch down and come back. Touch down and come back. Touch down and come back. To practice this, stand in front of the mirror, come on guard, imagine that cut coming at your leg, pull it back. Now, we've got a training partner. I want to call Felix out here quickly. We'll wait for him to come. And I'm going to have Felix come on guard. And come out here a little further, Felix. And I'm going to cut out his leg, and he's going to vacate that space. This helps really get you motivated. Someone comes in with a knife and cuts at your leg, you'll find that you can get out of the way. One of the strengths of our long-range knife fighting method is we engage our opponent at distances he doesn't expect us to. One of the best ways to do this is with the lunge we borrowed from Western fencing. To execute a lunge attack, the footwork is you stand your shoulders distance apart, your feet shoulders distance apart. You take your one step out, you assume you're fighting or on guard stance. Now what I want you to do is I want to push off big on my rear leg. Take a big step forward with your front leg. As you come down, your knee's going to bend pretty severely. Your left shoulder is going to turn all the way back. Your right hand is going to extend all the way forward. Your chin is going to be right over your hand so you can see what you're doing, and you're going to extend your knife in a saber grip or a palm reinforced grip or a modified quarter saber grip, whatever will give you the most reach in that lunge. See how much reach you can get? Now to recover from this, you push off on your front leg and come back on guard. Or from the lunge, you can bring your back leg up and come back on guard. Those are the two basic ways. If you recover from the lunge by pulling your front leg back, you're being more passive. If you recover by pulling your back leg up, you're being more aggressive. Now, keep in mind, when you're executing the lunge, it's a committed motion. What you do is you take your opponent at a distance he's not expecting you to. However, it's a committed motion. It's not to be used frivolously because it's very committed. Once I lunge, it's hard. It takes a lot of strength to come back up on guard. Now, when you're practicing this, a lot of you won't have the strength in your quads to do a full lunge to start with. As you come from your shoulders distance apart and your fighting stance and you push off, don't bend your knee all the way. Bend it part way. How does that feel? If you pull this muscle in here, you can wreck a nerve and you'll have no feeling in the outside of your leg. So you do this gingerly until you get used to it. When you're in a good lunge, your kneecap should cover your toe. Don't let your butt pooch out to the side. Don't do this. I see this quite often. That's no good. You're losing reach and you're wrecking your balance. Keep your butt tucked in. Keep this shoulder back. Don't turn your head this way. A lot of people lunge and they're looking out this way. No good. Another technique that we borrow from Western fencing that really allows you to extend your reach and take your opponent unawares is called the flèche. To execute the flèche, come in your fighting stance. And now, instead of pushing off like we did with our lunge, we're going to advance our back leg one big step. As we come down, we're going to bend this knee till it covers our front foot. We're going to turn this shoulder back as far as we can, and we're going to extend this hand as far as we possibly can. Don't turn your face to the side. Keep your butt in straight and tight. Lean and get the maximum amount of reach. As you can see, this takes a lot of strength. To recover from this is two ways. One, you can bring your back leg up and come back on guard, or from your flèche, you can pull this leg all the way back and come on guard. Now again, the flèche is a very committed motion. It takes a lot of strength and time to recover. You have to use the lunge and the flèche judiciously. You use it when you have a clear opening, but it's very, very useful, and you'll often be able to take your opponent with a lunge or a flèche. Another technique that we use in our long-range knife fighting method to take our opponent at a distance that he's unaware of, that he's vulnerable, is with what we call our leap and cut. I'm going to have Felix Valencia come in just a moment. He's my longtime training partner, and he's probably one of the best people I've ever trained with that can use this technique, and he's going to demonstrate how you can make it your own. Come on in, Felix.
When you apply the leaping cut, what I look for is an opponent that is tracking the knife. So what I would naturally do is when I commit to his face, he's got to block it or parry it off. I go halfway committed, and I take a big lunge and pull it back, and I drop, backhand snap, and I come palming up. Do it again. Halfway lunge, snap, palm up. Now I'll do it on this side. And again, halfway, committed, snap, and I'll go pulling backwards with the palm up. Just in case he comes back with another cut.